Welcome, Pastor David, to our random moments with Pastor David. And how are you doing today, Pastor?
Well, I'm feeling very random. I'm real random right now.
Well, good. I have a twofold random question for you.
All right.
First part of it, as you mentioned before, that the Beatles had an impact in your life growing up.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to ask which of the four Beatles would be considered your favorite?
My favorite. Which is my which is my favorite Beatle? I think it probably has. The answer would probably rest on phases of my own age. When I first encountered the Beatles' music, I was about 13 or 14 years old, and so the one that impressed me the most was John, because he was the leader, and I liked his voice, and I liked just his personality and all. And eventually I started liking Paul as a great Beatle because he wrote songs that I really liked, and his voice again was unique. And so for a while there I thought, well, I like Paul a lot, and the way he sings, and he wrote Yesterday and things like that, so I like that. Eventually George, because I began to see how he had an outspoken kind of personality and was real direct, well, then I started thinking that George had tremendous influence because he had that kind of approach to the question and answers that sometimes he was asked and the answers that he would give. So I started liking George. And then if you ever looked at my hands, you'll see there are 4 rings on them. I started wearing rings on my hands when I was in high school, probably when I was 14 or 15 years old. So obviously Ringo and his rings made an impact. And so from a kid's perspective, I went through a variety of senses of identification. I liked John's leadership. I liked Paul had a nice feel about him. He was a nice guy and wrote a lot of love songs. And then I liked George and all. But if you were to ask me who of my all-time, who I really would have thought, I don't think that there would have been such a thing as the Beatles without 4 of them. So every one of them in my life growing up as a kid had a certain aspect of their personality that helped to form my own, or helped to direct my own. Now, is that good? No, I think that the 4 men that have made more of an impact on me outside of Jesus would be Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
That's right.
But in terms of kid growing up liking music and having his mind formed by lyrics and behaviors, I think that they all had a season of great influence. But I think my all-time person that I felt the deepest sorrow for in many ways, and affection for, would have been John. So there you go.
Okay, Pastor, the second part of the question is which album of the Beatles would be considered your favorite?
I don't have a favorite album of the Beatles. I have phases of music, so with the Beatles, when you first met the Beatles, or when you started seeing their early days, I kind of flowed with their albums. And so I couldn't honestly say that if you threw every Beatle album away and I only could keep one, I don't know that there is one that I would say would be the one that I need to keep. My favorite style of Beatles music for a long time was the acoustic. I like their acoustic songs. There are a lot of songs that they sang that fell into the acoustic and the harmonies and all. But I couldn't throw away one Beatle album, or say one Beatle album was my all-time favorite. Though there were songs that came from albums at specific times. Playing Magical Mystery Tour, or I never really liked the White Album. I thought the White Album was kind of just a throwaway album in many ways. They were not really collaborating that much in that album, as I hear. Abbey Road will always be a would always be a sentimental, for obvious reasons. I have a picture of me walking, I think, across Abbey Road when I was
cool.
in London once or something. But I kind of, again, when you're a kid, you kind of grow up with them, and so Sergeant Pepper's and Magical Mystery Tour and things like that. Again, this is from a perspective of a man who's no longer 15 years old, and my loves have changed from loving Beatle music and this and that to other things, obviously. But with fondness, I can remember special times, sitting with friends playing Magical Mystery Tour, or you name it. I mean, one of my friends and I loved the Beatles so much that that's all we ever did is play Beatle music, and just sit in my parents' den and just play the latest, and waiting for the album, the newest song to come out, and learning the lyrics of the songs. And eventually they got kind of like goofy, and I mean, I like to tell people that the songs of my past had more meaning, but my goodness, how meaningful is Goo 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 Jube, or right, I just don't think that really is that deep, So, but the Beatles did have quite an influence in me in my life growing up. Their harmonies,
right,
and the creativity, the genius, but at the same time, I grieve because they didn't come to faith in Christ. Marie and I have been in New York on December 8th on a number of times, because I minister in New York and have done so off and on for years. And we've been there on the anniversary of the assassination of John Lennon. We've been there at the Dakota, and we've gone to the right across the street to Central Park, to Strawberry Fields. They have a little section called Strawberry Fields. And we've stood there with Randy and Jeanette Walls and other friends, and we have seen the groups of people who will gather to observe the day of John Lennon's death, and with pity in your heart, with compassion, and sometimes almost sadness. I've seen the lost people, all the lonely people, and I've seen these lonely people, and I've seen them being interviewed by the news. What did John mean to you? And to watch them wax eloquently, and to try and make it seem like John was some kind of saint, when in fact he said the song Imagine was simply the Marxist philosophy in musical form. And he said that it was an interesting thing how people gravitated so naturally to socialism. And he said, and all it was is just Marxism. I mean, listen to the words. Imagine there's no heaven. Imagine there's no hell. Imagine nothing, other than what people getting together. And this was a song penned by a man who called himself he felt he was naturally inclined to socialism. John did. And yet he died back in 80, whenever it was, 1980. He died at that time with wealth that was estimated at over $500 million. Wow. And so and that's, many years ago now, 40 years ago. So for someone to say that I am a instinctual socialist, and yet to amass $500 million, and not to think about the apparent conflict, to me was amazing. And the way people would call him a man of peace, when in fact he was known for a violent temper. He almost beat a man to death one time, because he beat him so bad and so severely, because a man accused him of being a homosexual. This PC culture of ours today probably have forgotten those kinds of things, and so, but me, having been able to grow up during that period, those are pieces that you'd find in the newspaper. But a lot of the stuff that about the Beatles, a lot of the things about their personal lives and things were hidden from the people by the press, because the press was invited to go to their parties and to drink and smoke dope with them and all of that. Nobody talks about the Beatle babies, the babies that were born out of wedlock through the Beatles having sexual relations with girls, groupies and stuff. Nobody talks about the Beatle babies. I bet you many of the people listening right now don't even know there's such a thing as Beatle babies. But there was just an awful lot that was going on where we romanticized that period of time. We romanticized the Beatles, and I was one who did, until I got saved, and then I was able to have my blinders removed, and I said, you know what, these men were amazing, great talent, musical skills, poetic and everything, but very lost. Very lost. One of my friends, Mike McIntosh, had been invited to go and share with John the gospel of Jesus Christ, and shortly after, somebody had said, could you come and speak to John? John was assassinated.
Wow.
He never had an opportunity. But when he was speaking about Imagine, and people said, look at what you're saying. You're saying there's no heaven, there's no hell, and no religion. And John said, well, I'm talking about false religions, which is interesting. So in John's mind, apparently there was something called a true religion, and I read a report one time many years ago that said for a very short time, John even said things about Jesus, and I think that there was an admiration that perhaps somewhere in his history he might have retained during the Jesus movement. That was something that was reported, that even John, for a couple of days, actually said praise Jesus or whatever. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. I read that in an account during those times. But again, I don't mind. I enjoy talking about music and things like that, different things that people don't really know about me. I enjoy doing that, and all, but I don't want to ever give the impression that I think those days were trouble-free or idyllic, for that matter. They weren't. They were troubled days, and the movement from just being entertainers and singing songs to becoming influencers, and then influencing people like George Harrison did, towards Hinduism and all of that. It's just been a sad. It's more a portion of a sad memory for me, because they lost out on Jesus, and Paul to this day has lost out on Jesus, and so has Ringo. They don't know him. At least I have never heard that they've come to know him. But with that said, when you're 13, 14 years old and you're getting kind of tired of hearing songs on the radio like "How much is that doggy in the window?" and here comes some lads from Liverpool with what they used to call long hair, which is short hair today, and that irreverent kind of like in-your-face attitude. That was very appealing to a kid my age that was kind of stuck with some of the bad music. All you need to do is look at the top 10 for 1960, 61, 62, and you'll see that that the Beatles' music was very refreshing come late 63, 64. Very refreshing. And no longer did I have to hear songs like "Does Your Gum Lose Its Flavor on the Bedpost Overnight" or something stupid like that, right? So, anyway, there's a little glimpse into my musical mentality.
Thank you, Pastor. And
You're
we look
welcome.
forward to our next week's Random Moments with Pastor David.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.